If you're applying for disability benefits or help people that are, the path to success has never been more complicated. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast, where we tackle the difficult issues and interview the country's top experts to help you better navigate the disability process. Winning a disability case is hard and keeps getting tougher every day. We can't promise you'll win your case by listening, but we sure think it's going to help.
This really isn't that complicated. I mean, you want to win your case, don't you? Well, then listen to what I say.
Hey, it's Chad Brown. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast. So glad you're with us today. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Don Pilzer. Don, thanks for being on the show. Yeah, I'm really excited Don's here. He is one of the most experienced disability lawyers in the country. Let me tell you a little bit about him. That's not an exaggeration. He graduated at Duke University School of Law. He started practicing Social Security disability law way back in 1982. For more than 40 years, he's been a disability lawyer. This is, by my estimation, probably the most successful disability lawyer in the history of the state of South Carolina. He's had a practice there in Greenville, Spartanburg area. Has helped people all over the state of South Carolina, since the early 80s, up into North Carolina as well. Been a personal friend of mine for almost a decade now, I guess we've known each other, Don. So I'm just so thankful that you're here on the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Chad. It will be fun.
Yeah, with 40 years of history, I'm fairly sure we can't cover all of your expertise in a 20-minute podcast. But I want to start with a couple of things. One, just how did you get into the practice of disability law? I mean, obviously you've been in it a long time. You're one of the best lawyers in the country. How did you actually get into that space to start with?
In 1982, I started my practice. Nobody knew me. I didn't have any connections. It was a general practice. I was just a hungry young lawyer 2 years out of law school looking for some work. And my office was above the building where the Social Security Administration was. One day, there was a guy down in the plaza demonstrating Social Security unfair. They denied his disability claim. It's this little Italian guy. He was down from New York, a wannabe mafioso that didn't make it. He wasn't good enough to be in the mafia, very frustrated over that. But in any event, he was demonstrating and somebody said, well, why don't you go down and ask him if you can help him? And I guess it was soliciting, but I did. I talked to him and I didn't know anything about Social Security. Nobody was doing it. The other lawyers wanted workers' comp and personal injury because everybody thought that was money. I think Social Security capped fees at $1,000 or maybe $2,000 back in those days, which nobody, even in 1982, that didn't get any interest. Well, heck, I was the lawyer of fourth choice in 1982. No reputable lawyer. The reason they were in my office is no one reputable would represent them. They had no money or a crappy case or something. I was, happy to get $500 to do like a hillbilly divorce where they're fighting over who got the Kenny Rogers album. So to me, $1,000 fee was wonderful. Hell yeah. And nobody even on the other side. This is a dream. Of course, in SSI cases back in those days, you had to trust the people to pay you because they paid in a lump sum and they sent the entire check straight to the claimant. So I literally had to knock on doors to collect sometimes, but I found that I didn't get burned enough for it to not be a good deal overall. I was getting referrals of SSI cases very soon. Oh, just another long story. I wasn't making any money as a lawyer. I really wasn't. My wife was a teacher. She was carrying me. And I got this idea to make money by selling audio tapes about Social Security law. And I tried to sell them via the National Enquirer and the tabloids. And I made the tapes and I spent about $5,000 and then I promoted them in the tabloid classified section and nobody ordered them. No, now I'm out like $5,000. But the one thing I had learned in my previous job how to get a trademark, and my business was called Touchstone. Well, this is right when Disney was trying to get a trademark for Touchstone motion pictures. And I would have made a lot of money off of it, except they had me beat, but they paid me to go away. So I got my investment back, $5,000. And got a lot of SSI referrals from lawyers that didn't want to get burned out of their fee in SSI cases.
That's so funny. When I, before, I'm on my own firm now, but when I started back in 2004, I worked for Jack Parton. I don't know if you know Jack or not. Jack's a long time a disability lawyer in North Carolina, but literally the way he started his practice was everyone felt sorry for him. They were like, well, I don't know why you would want to help these people on disability, but they call us. So he just sort of, yeah, okay, well, I'll represent them, I guess. And sure enough, by the time I went to work for Widow 4, I mean, we were opening hundreds and hundreds of cases a year. So that's neat. So that's how you got into it, though. I know just from our conversations over the years, very passionate about helping people that are disabled. Can you just kind of, briefly say, hey, why have you stayed in the space so long? How have you maintained that passion for representing them, over 40 years, which is, it's a long time. It's a real testament to your commitment to the disabled community.
Well, I think it's a wonderful client. You really get to help them when they're in need. These are people who are really hurting. Yeah, disability claimants cover the gamut, everything from doctors to people with 60 IQs. But
sure,
generally speaking, it's a group that's already kind of beat up. And they're down and they need some help, and they just need somebody to reassure them that they're going to be taken care of. One of the interesting things, I used to think being a lawyer was all about how smart you were and how much you knew about law and how, your ability to present an erudite argument in court, or even how articulate you are. But what I've found in the practice of law is that it's not about your intellectual skills or even your courtroom skills. It's about your ability to make people feel cared for and win the client versus, winning the case. Hey, man, I was on probably the worst basketball team in the state of Indiana in high school. We always lost. Losing doesn't scare me, but not being prepared does. And so, and knowing that know what business you're in. Are you in the business of winning cases, or are you in the business of winning clients? And that's one bit of advice I'd give.
Hey there, this is Kevin Rosenquist from the Disability Expert Podcast. Every week, Chad and his guests discuss the disability process and how expert attorneys help their clients obtain the Social Security disability benefits they deserve. But obtaining disability benefits is only half the battle. After winning your disability case, understanding Medicare should be your top priority, and that's where CBIG comes in. Disabled individuals must get their Medicare coverage right. Trying to understand Medicare can cause anxiety, uncertainty, and even fear. CBIG works with Medicare beneficiaries on disability around the country and is committed to helping those on disability navigate the complex Medicare process. Visit cbigcares.com today to see how CBIG makes Medicare simplified. Mention this ad and receive a free gift when you schedule a 10-minute consultation.
Obviously, things have changed over 40 years in how we represent people. Like I remember even when I was practicing, they didn't withhold SSI fees. I remember very clearly we were one of the firms that took SSI cases when other people didn't, because they wouldn't take the cases because they knew that the Social Security Administration wouldn't withhold their fee. But from a client standpoint, in terms of winning cases, what has changed, if anything? And then what are some of the main things that you see, hey, across the board, these are things you need to do if you're going to have a chance to win your case, just from the client's perspective?
From the client's point of view, obviously, you don't want to be working while you're saying that you can't work. The biggest trap I see clients fall into, and increasingly they're sophisticated enough to get on the internet before they talk to us and know a little bit about the rules. And they see the rule that substantial gainful activity is $1,470 gross per month. And they think, oh, sweet. If I make $1,000 or $1,200 a month, I'm under the rule and I'm good. And I'm just constantly disabusing people of that. Oh no, you will lose. And I really think unless it's like you're the homeless guy who rakes leaves a few times in the autumn here and there for a little cigarette money, boy, any kind of work is devastating where I'm in practice. I just, that's an amended onset date or you've lost or something.
Yeah, I think the thing is struggles, like I think it's with our clients. And one of the things that we struggle with is we lose the ability to make the best argument we can make, which is they can't work. Now we're in some sort of, modified argument where maybe they could only work part-time or they could only work with some limitation. But, as I do, that's a lot harder argument to make than you can't work at all.
Yeah. And I think the other advice is, listen to your lawyer's advice. And your lawyer might be recommending an amended onset date. It's because he wants to win. I mean, don't take that 7 points and don't go for 8, is kind of what I'd say. Although I think as counsel, I listen to the client, I want to do an amended onset date today, and she just wasn't having it. It's like, okay, you see, you've got a losing case if you're counsel, and she won't even give you that much. It's like, okay, it's a losing case. I'd rather lose it her way than mine,
Yeah, sure. And that's frustrating. So talking about things that are frustrating. One of the things that we deal with, I was talking to Aaron Dalton, who I know you know, who works with our firm today. We were talking about wait times. And I think this week alone, he did a hearing where someone filed in April of 2022 and July of 2023. And I think we had another one where they filed in like September of 2024. So like you have this wide range where sometimes there can be, a couple of years where we're representing them. And there's really not anything we can do. We're sort of stuck in a holding pattern. How do you deal with these sort of dead periods where there's not really a lot we can do? What should the lawyer be doing with the client? What should the client understand? It's just, it's sort of this dormancy period. How do you deal with that in your practice and your clients?
Well, I think you need to make sure the client feels cared for at all the times and knows what to expect from you by consistent behaviors from your office. Specifically, what you don't want during the dormancy period is a client, and this will happen if you do nothing, she'll be thinking, well, I wish I knew what was going on with my disability case. I hired a lawyer a year ago and I haven't heard, and what has it been, 10 months? I think it was before Christmas, and I think I'll call him and see what he's done. No, he's busy. I don't want to bother him and he might get mad. Oh my gosh, well now she's getting mad and there's resentment building up and nobody's talking about it, but man, it's there. It's just like a fart in the room. Nobody even wants to talk about it, but man, it's there. So what you do is you have a case manager who consistently calls the claimant. In my office, it's intervals of every 4 to 6 weeks. That's really often enough. But you tell the client right up front, you're going to get a touch call. It's going to come every 4 to 6 weeks. It could be a text. It could be an email. It could be a call. You tell us how you want us to communicate. But we are going to be in touch. Right. And we are going to get the evidence in. And we are going to prepare up front. And of course, you can talk to your lawyer anytime you need legal advice. But, I, your manager, am the one that really has its head in the details right now. And you condition them to expect that. Then you'll never get the call, but what have you done for me lately? I'm losing everything. Where have you been? Right. I mean, that shouldn't happen. It will. It'll still happen. Yeah, but it will very, very rarely happen. And you'll have a client that you've won over that's on your side, that's confident that they're in confident, caring hands. And that's actually immensely more important than winning the case. You'll get good Google reviews from that client. You'll get referrals from that client. And that's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to your promotion and making your business.
Yeah. And I think, one of the, when we get calls from sort of national firms, people who are being represented by people in some of these bigger national firms, that's the number one complaint. I have no idea what's going on in my case. I don't know what's happening with my case. But I think what a lot of clients really don't understand is, what you just described with how you interact with your client goes back to the reason you've been in the space for 40 years. Like if you don't really care about your clients, then it's not going to bother you that they have to sit and wait. But if you genuinely care about them and you understand their financial stress, you understand what's going on in their life, then you want to reassure them. And I think that's why you're one of the best lawyers in the country. That those little things I don't think people appreciate, but they're derivative of the fact of why you're in the space to start with, not just to make money, to actually care for these people and work with them.
And I'd add one more thing. The procedure has to be a procedure. Everybody talks about systematizing their office. If you have only one thing systematized in your office, systematize this and enforce it. Audit your managers, make sure they're doing it, warn them that if they don't do it, and the second time, fire them, and just let them see somebody get fired for not doing it. It will happen, but you have to make it happen. It's got to be a clear understanding enforced from the top by the lawyer. It can't be a sentiment. Wouldn't it be nice if we had time to call these people? You do have time. You must do it. God damn it. You understand? You hear? And you're going to be fired if you don't.
Yeah, for sure. I want to shift gears a minute. Okay. Because I know we could talk a disability lawyer nerd procedure for hours. I don't know if anybody would appreciate it but us, but we could. I know because we have. But I want to shift to talk about something else I know you're passionate about, and that's your son, George. I know you guys have a unique relationship. We're friends on Facebook. I see your posts. I also know just from, our friendship that he's had some struggles over the years. And, do you mind talking a little bit about George, sort of his struggles when he was younger, how he's doing now? Because I know he's doing great. And then you guys have a really unique relationship. And I think it's better than talking about disability. And I was just hoping you might be willing to share with us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing up George. He's now in his 30s, but he's on the autism spectrum. And of course, that produced a lot of issues when he was in school. They wanted him in special ed, thought his intellectual deficiencies were serious, and they weren't. That was kind of ridiculous, but he would have meltdowns. He couldn't conform enough in gym for them to really have him playing team sports or anything. But he was athletic as heck. I got him riding a bike. My philosophy with him and approach was, okay, autism is a neurological disorder. That's the wiring of his brain. Get him moving. Just make him do something, and maybe his brain will rewire itself. Neural activity of any kind from anything. Just get it going. Don't let him vegetate. And it turned out to be amazingly easy because I got him on a bike and he took to it and loved it. When he was 9 years old, he did his first 100-mile bike ride with me, and we climbed mountains on the course of that 100-mile ride. You couldn't stop him. And then he became obsessed. He was obsessed about the sequences of the roads, and he didn't have any friends because he was just so abnormal. Maybe on the street, actually, our house was the fun place for the kids to come, but he didn't really have school friends. He went all through high school and the phone never rang. Hey, George, let's go hang out. None of that. So he really lived for our weekend adventures on our bikes in the mountains of North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, Tennessee. We'd do epic bike rides where we'd go multi-states, Eastern Tennessee. He loved the scenery, and so did I. There was just this romance about it. Every year we'd do what we called the all-nighter, where we'd walk a 34-mile road walk under a full moon in the summer. And, we just never stopped reminiscing about the glory of the days, the romance of being in this beautiful place that we live, and just the experiences and the sleeping on the ground out on the French Broad River. We were like Huck and Jim. And now in adult life, he's had problems. He's not intellectually bad at all. He's ridden his bike, by the way, from Thailand to Tibet solo, through Yunnan province, China, Laos. He's totally fearless. That's another thing amazing about him. It's like he'll do it. I think last year, we biked from Key West to Miami and then across the state in one day to Marco Island on the Gulf. We love doing that, and I'm going to help him finish a bike ride across the country I'm going to kind of sag with the car while he crosses Nevada and California to make it from coast to coast finishing. But he has a job. I told him he got kicked out of the ed school at Asheville. It's maybe a little private, but it was very unfair. He was a straight A student. He did everything right, but in his student teaching, they picked up on his oddity. Just that this is a guy that presents as odd, and the kids will eat him alive. And they washed him out of the ed school, and he was devastated, just devastated. And, he was talking about walking coast to coast across the country on the American Discovery Trail. He'd already hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, done stuff like that. And I told him, George, you are one adventure away from being an overprivileged bum. You're going to have to find a way to make yourself productive in adult life. And by golly, he had the integrity to go to Greenville Tech, learn electronics and mechanical stuff, and he's got a job in a factory that's a skilled job, and he's happy. And it's better than being a teacher. He goes home at the end of the day and rides his bike, and it's not on his mind, and the people love him there. So I'm real proud of him.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's a real testament to you too. I know how do you think that's impacted your disability practice at all? Obviously seeing some of his disabilities and challenges, and it may not have, but do you think that's impacted your sort of how you view your clients and how you engage with them?
Well, yeah, particularly when I talk to parents of younger people, and autism spectrum is such a spectrum. Usually, if it's an autism case, it's the anxiety that kills them. They just are too afraid to do anything, and that's why they don't move more. Fortunately, I was just really, really lucky. George had neither that nor the intellectual deficiencies that sometimes coincide. But I tell people with higher functioning autistics that it's really important that they learn a skill. You don't want them in the dang kitchen of a McDonald's. It's highly stressful. It's highly fast-paced. It's highly social. It doesn't pay much. And the people, if you get on a bad crew, they're going to be brutal. They're going to pick up on your oddity. They're going to see that you do things more slowly. For example, George, we made him wash the dishes after dinner, but good grief, it took him 45 minutes because I don't know what he's doing. He's the same way in the bathroom all the time. It's like he does it, but he does it so excruciatingly slowly that if it's an unskilled job, he's not competitive, and they are going to want to get rid of it. If they're high enough functioning to get some skill, make them get the skill and get them out of that dang McDonald's kitchen. The other people on the crew will eat them alive because they too are low functioning. They just don't have an excuse. So you've got to get him in a place where he'll have enough skill to get a little respect, and maybe people cut him a little slack.
I think that's great advice. I know over the years we represent so many, both children and adults with autism. And one of the things you find is that, especially the ones that are on sort of the higher end of the functioning of the spectrum, that they get marginalized sometimes as if they don't have the skills. But you're right. If you can get a true skill set where they can get in an environment that's a little higher functioning and maybe a little higher intellect even, they're going to be able to navigate that space a lot better and be successful, which obviously George is. And it's crazy though. Like the Appalachian Trail and all those things he's done. I just think that's amazing how fearless he is in that capacity. I think that's awesome. So I want to finish up. I know retirement's coming for you. Your firm's, I want to go a couple things. Your firm is going to continue helping in the upstate South Carolina and Western North Carolina. I want to make sure people know your firm is going to continue. But so tell us a little bit about that. And then if you don't mind, what are your plans?
Well, the firm's in good hands. Kevin Klein is taking over, and he's been with me for probably 15 years. I don't know exactly, but he's a very accomplished lawyer as well. My own plan is to be out hiking as much as I can be, out on my bike and traveling. I really am happiest out in the woods. It could be a winter's day. I love winter hiking, spring hiking. I'm only 3-season backpacker, though. I don't want to be in a tent when the nights are long and cold, but I'm going to be hiking all over southeastern United States, and my wife is in good health. She likes to go hiking with me, so that's my plan.
Well, I think you certainly, after 43 years in the disability space, have earned a few hikes and some retirement time for you and your wife and your family. And I'm excited for you. Just always valued our friendship over the years, and just want to thank you for coming on the podcast and being one of my first guests. I'm really glad we got to talk and hopefully some people learned some things. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show.
Okay. Thanks, Chad.
Goodbye. Hey, so there you go. That's this episode of the Disability Expert Podcast. Be with us next week when we interview another one of the country's best experts, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks a lot.